What do these four women have in common? They are all Disney princesses. Based upon old fairy tales, the films that they represent have release dates that range from 1937 to 2010, 73 years, and serve as touchstones on the development of the female character in children's movies. I say children's movies as Disney has undoubtedly set the precedent on the genre of animated film marketed towards children. Disney princesses have become a cultural icon with their own spin-off toys, games, clothing, and assorted knickknacks. Because of its prevalence, these movies also have influence. The good guys, in this case the princes and princesses, act as role models, while the bad guys serve as a warning of what not to do. As children consume movies such as these, they are taught what is expected of them by society, or, in doc terms, socialized into the hegemony. Each princess has impacted culture in their own way, but as mentioned before, this video will look at how they have influenced the concept of gender roles in the US through looking at the beliefs they represent and exemplify. A side note, keep in mind that 3 of the 4 movies take place before the 1960s and therefore second-wave feminism in the US. Tangled, being the exception, serves as a demonstration of the development of Disney princesses through time. As such, some of the ideas and beliefs presented in these films may seem inappropriate and outdated. However, as said before, it is important to examine them as they play a key role in shaping the modern understanding of patriarchy, or male dominance. We will be focusing today on these 4 princesses out of the wide Disney repertoire. Snow White from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella from Cinderella, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, and Rapunzel from Tangled. The movies themselves are representative of residual ideologies. By that, I mean attitudes and beliefs of historical roots, and I'm not just talking about the sexism. All these films come from a very old tradition of fairy tales, and Disney draws upon this to help sell their movies and their products. Let's start with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This movie was based on the German Brothers Grimm version, first published in 1812. As the earliest animated full-length movie released by the Walt Disney Animated Studios, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered on the 21st of December, 1937. It quickly became very popular, collecting glowing reviews and even scoring the cover of the Time magazine. This meant that a lot of people came into contact with the ideas presented in the movie. First impressions matter, and the first song sung by Snow White is about romance. Take a look at Snow White's first appearance in the film. What can we take from this? That the writers wanted to showcase her hard-working ethics through her ability to clean stairs? As the scene goes on, she starts to sing about her wish.
I'm wishing for the one I love to find me today.
And gets interrupted by a random man who just happened to be riding by. Understandably scared, she flees inside but quickly changes her mind through the course of one song, demonstrating to the intended audience of children that it's actually romantic for strange people to pop up nearby as you clean. As I said before, this tells us that her defining characteristics are that she can clean and doesn't mind strange men approaching her. The rest of the movie follows the same vein, such as the time when she stuns the drawers of her beauty, or barters her lodging by offering to cook and clean. Furthermore, she takes a very passive role in the budding romance we saw beforehand. The prince himself doesn't show up again up until he kisses her, despite her frequent musings and songs about how romantic the strange fellow in the garden was. Let's go into a little bit of historical context. Released at the end of the Great Depression, the production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs provided much-needed jobs, whilst the story itself represented hope for the future. What girl would not want to be a beautiful princess waiting for their prince to come by so that they can ride off into their happily ever after? On that note, let's move to the story of Cinderella. The earliest datable version goes back as far as 850 AD, written by a Chinese official and featuring the bones of a magic fish instead of a fairy godmother. The tale stuck around as the Brothers Grimm, the same inspiration behind Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, also published their own take on the story. However, the Disney film is based upon the more popular version published by Charles Perrault. Eurocentric? Perhaps, but marketing a movie with an Asian lead would have been much more difficult and more likely to flop than if they used the already known European variant of the same tale, the same version used by several prior non-Disney adaptations. Cinderella was released 5 years after World War II. Having just beaten the evil communists, the US understandably had a great deal of nationalistic pride, and a great deal of hope as well for the future. Perhaps this is one of the reasons that Cinderella, too, became highly popular, as her story of success after long years of suffering resonated with America. Looking at the film itself, Cinderella has some striking similarities to Snow White. Again, her first appearance in song, bearing the introductory narration, is also about her wish for a better life as she prepares for the day.
Have faith in your dreams, and someday
They both like to, or at least is somewhat defined, by their ability to do housework, even if it is mostly done by small animals. They also have the amazing ability to quietly wait for their dreams to come true. Both these princesses are supposed to be beautiful. In Cinderella's case, she only needs a pretty dress to blow everyone away, tempting even the prince, who throws aside his promise not to marry when he sees her. This reinforces the idea that women need to be good-looking in order to be valued. In other words, the film measures the princess's worth through the approval of the male characters, in Cinderella's case, the prince, and to a rather creepy extent, the guards as well. To be fair, however, Cinderella is slightly more assertive, breaking out of her room in order to try on the shoe. After so many years of passivity, Cinderella finally stands up for herself in order to be with her prince. A small step, to be sure, but it speaks volumes on how the female character is gradually becoming more independent. Talking about gradual changes, Sleeping Beauty was released 9 years after, in 1959. Unlike Snow White and Cinderella, however, Sleeping Beauty was not a box office hit. Perhaps one reason for this is because it followed on the heels of the Red Scare, which cultivated an environment of paranoia and fear. Maybe people were just not in the mood to indulge in the romantic and idealistic childish fairy tales. Regardless, Disney did not deliberately set out to make a movie that would fail. With that, let's see what the studio thought would resonate with the public, and therefore, what the prevailing attitudes were at the time. Aurora's first non-narrated appearance is a scene of her betrothal as a baby in order to unite the kingdoms. She is presented as a thing good only for bartering, pretty much reducing her to an object with no will of her own. However, the movie is quick to address this by showing her free spirit in her first song.
I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream.
Note that while she still sings about romance, she dances around the woods, moving about much more than Cinderella and Snow White, demonstrating a more assertive personality. Remember that in the first song, Snow White hides behind the curtain in the balcony, and Cinderella stays in her room. Aurora takes a more dominant role in this scene, yet she still shows that her main priority is romance. Later on in the movie, when she realizes that she cannot meet the man in the woods again, she lets herself be dragged off by the good fairies, only to break down sobbing when she reaches the castle. She reverts back to the passive princess character that Disney seems to love so much. Furthermore, the passivity of all three princesses seemed to be exactly what Robin Morgan wrote about in No More Miss America, when she writes about the young and malleable character of the ideal woman. No More Miss America is a piece that was distributed in 1968 during the second wave feminist movement. It lists out complaints on what society expects out of women. Many of her points overlap the portrayal of the Disney princesses we have already talked about. Surely a few movies cannot impact the patriarchy that much, right? Well, according to Cynthia Kaufman, any message repeated enough times will have a deep effect on people's thoughts and behavior, and these sexist messages have definitely been repeated enough times, even into the modern day. No More Miss America is a good example of this, as it is these messages, conveyed through the Disney movies, that they are fighting against. Speaking of genders, did you notice? The male characters so far tend to be part of the good guys. We will talk about this later in the video. So how does the modern movie compare? Let's take a look at Tangled, released in 2010, 51 years after Sleeping Beauty. The 2000s beckoned in the age of globalization and the internet. As everyone became more connected, injustices were more quickly spotted and arguably better fought against. It is in this era of connection that tango became so popular. Small wonder that, with the tale of breaking out into a new world resonating with so much of the modern world. On to the actual movie. As usual, we will start with Rapunzel's first song. She sings about how she feels trapped in her tower, but there is not a glimmer of romantic yearning. Already, she deviates from Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora. However, a good number of her activities are what are considered domestic, such as the cleaning and dressmaking. This does not invalidate her character though. As I said before, princes are becoming more free with their modes of expression, and Rapunzel clearly has that in spades. Compared to the previous three princesses, her almost frantic energy demonstrates a less restrictive view on gender roles. Keep in mind though, Rapunzel is not the perfect feminist character. In her movie Tangled, combat plays an important role, so therefore we should look at her way of fighting. She uses a pan, a blunt force weapon, as her main means of dealing damage. Compared to the swords and daggers and knives that seem ubiquitous throughout the movie, objectively speaking, she is comparatively weaker, defanged so to speak, and singled out. In addition, a pan is a cooking utensil, linking Rapunzel's character to the kitchen in a not so subtle way, perhaps a connection to the innocent paradigm that second-wave feminists are fighting so hard against. Now, let's quickly touch upon the representation of the male character as a contrast to the female. For example, the father figure is never turned into a villain, and the primary antagonist in all four movies is a woman. Furthermore, the female villain is often portrayed as being just as beautiful as the princess herself. Traditionally speaking, beauty is good, so why would some characters be portrayed as virtuous, and the others practically the incarnation of the devil himself? This religious symbolism is not a mistake. Check out the sequence in Maleficent's lair in Sleeping Beauty. One possible explanation is that this is an example of the Madonna whore trap that the feminists of the 60s warned us about. As they said, deviation of any sort, we are told, brings disaster. Keeping this in mind, the princesses are sweet, innocent, and in the end vulnerable, while the evil queen, evil fairy, or evil stepmother are markedly stronger and in positions of power. We know that the princesses are meant to show young girls how to act, so by demonstrating that powerful and assertive women are evil, it teaches these girls that they should accept the patriarchy as a natural state of order. At the end of the day though, these four Disney princesses are only that, Disney princesses. Why does it matter? Well, now that we know how these films have influenced the wider fabric of society in terms of the patriarchy, we can extrapolate from this and use it to understand how other media influences modern culture. Put it this way, these films are but a small sample of the Disney repertoire, which is but one film company out of many. We can keep going. Film is but one form of media. There are books, music, advertisement, games, etc., etc., etc. We are surrounded by so many modes of expression in our day-to-day lives, so what we can do is use our understanding of these films to recognize the role that media has in shaping the environment around us. And with that understanding, we can take it one step further and dare to even change our environment, take control of what we teach our children.